Filmmakers Matt Bettinelli Olpin and Tyler Gillette, collectively known as Radio Silence, are back again, and this time with a vampire thriller, basically a reimagining of the late Lambert Hillier's 1936 vampire horror film titled Dracula's Daughter. Now, Abigail doesn't exactly fall under the category of the best vampire movie to have been released yet, but having said that, the film, which just had its theatrical release, is already a hit among horror fanatics. It is fair to say Abigail hits the right notes, starting off with a rather cliched premise that actually works in its favor. So we have a group of criminals who do not know each other, brought together for a purpose. They abduct the ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure and bring her to an isolated mansion in the hopes of having the girl's father pay the ransom. Of course, the kidnapping part was child's play, and babysitting the seemingly helpless daughter looked pretty much effortless, because what exactly is a 12-year-old ballerina girl capable of doing? Especially when it's a 6 against 1 kind of a situation. Well, we're soon going to find that out. In today's video, we will not only spoil the movie for you and explain the ending, but also shed light on the anatomy and origins of the eponymous character. Are you ready? Let's dive right into the video. But before we get into our explanation, we do have a very small request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now let's begin. Children can be such monsters. Abigail the movie explored. The film opens with Abigail practicing ballet dance to Swan Lake, after which she is kidnapped by a group of 6 heavily armed professional criminals from her home and taken to a secluded mansion outside the city. There, the group meets a guy who introduces himself as Lambert and tells them they all were selected because of their high recommendations. Lambert tells the group to pay attention to the rules, no using real names and no backstories. The group is quite a mixed bag, comprising ex-army medic and recovering junkie Joey, hot-headed former NYPD detective Frank, rich brat hacker Sammy, sociopathic wheelman Dean, military sniper Rickles, and mob enforcer Peter. Mind you, each name is a code name given by Lambert to the group so that they have names to refer to each other and thereby avoid the risk of getting their real identities exposed. Anyway, Lambert informs that it is a 24-hour job, and because the hard part is already over, the group is only required to babysit. With Joey particularly told to watch over Abigail, she asks Lambert about the girl's identity. Lambert doesn't give her a straight answer, but tells her that the girl happens to be the daughter of a very wealthy man who is about to be $50 million poor. Before leaving the mansion, Lambert collects everybody's cell phones, tells them to keep the doors locked, the girl isolated, and also informs that the kitchen and bar are fully stocked. Joey goes to check on Abigail, who seems utterly confused by the turn of events. Joey informs a terrified and in tears Abigail that she is being held here until her father pays her ransom money, and that in the meantime, she's here to keep her safe and comfortable. This is even followed by a pinky promise between the duo, with Joey vowing to Abigail that she will not let anyone hurt her. However, with Joey realizing that she's beginning to bond with Abigail, she decides to put a pause to the whole thing and come back to the room later. But as she turns to leave, Abigail tells her she is sorry about what's going to happen to her. Joey returns to the main hall where everyone is and asks Frank if he knows who the girl's father is. Frank says he doesn't, to which Joey tells him that the girl just implied that her father might particularly be a very violent man. Frank attempts to reason with Joey, telling her that it is likely for the girl to rattle her because she is terrified at the moment. For someone who doesn't get scared easily, Joey was alarmed by Abigail's earlier statement. Nonetheless, she decided not to act on it. Frank, on the other hand, confronts Abigail and is horrified to learn that her father happens to be the infamous crime lord Christophe Lazar. He immediately tells the group that he's leaving and that he doesn't want anything to do with the share. With Joey stopping and asking him what's going on, Frank discloses Abigail's father's identity to the group, further stating that Lazar is more likely to hunt them all down and kill them brutally than pay the ransom. But of course, that isn't the only problem. The group learns that while Frank had gone inside to confront Abigail, the latter had seen his face, post a bit of an argument, and especially upon realizing that each member is due to receive $7 million, they agree to spend the remaining 22 hours in the mansion and pull off the mission while staying alert. Later, when a prank by Dean on Sammy lands him in a rough spot, he wanders off to the basement alone, where he gets forcefully dragged away by someone. His screams are heard by Sammy, who eventually discovers his decapitated head placed casually on top of his lifeless seated mutilated body. The remaining members of the group arrive, and upon inspecting Dean's corpse, most believe Lazar's hitman, Valdez, has gained access inside the mansion and is responsible for butchering Dean like that. Rickles tries to leave immediately, but he only causes the mansion's security system to activate, which results in the whole place getting locked up. Joey goes to Abigail and asks her if she is keeping any secret from her. This is when Abigail tells Joey that Frank works for her father and that his name is Valdez. Rickles intervenes in the duo's conversation and asks Joey to come out of the room post, which he tells her that someone stole his rifles. Joey tells Rickles that Frank is Valdez and that there is a high possibility that Frank and Lambert are planning a power play. With the duo looking for another way out, Rickles gets mauled to death in the process. This is Joey accusing Frank of being Valdez. Frank, angry that Abigail has besmirched his good name, tells Peter to kill Abigail. Peter goes to Abigail's room and points a gun at her, only to have Joey intervene in the situation. In the middle of the ensuing chaos, no one but Sammy realizes that something isn't quite right with Abigail. Abigail's transformation into a terrifying-looking vampire, and in this case, a ballerina vampire, takes place right in front of everyone. And as much as it had an impact on everybody, Joey is absolutely staggered. The group is further shocked to realize bullets do not affect Abigail, and they escape the room screaming in horror. Laying their hands on things that a vampire is supposedly susceptible to, such as steaks, garlic, and holy crucifixes, Frank, Sammy, and Peter attempt to overpower Abigail, whom they find donning a ballet tutu and dancing to the tune of Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake with a decapitated corpse of Dean. Well, it's only fitting to say that every attempt by the trio is proven to be unsuccessful by Abigail, and the trio is forced to retreat. The trio regroups this time with Joey, who suggests using a tranquilizer on Abigail, as that has been the only thing which has proved to be effective on Abigail earlier. Following a new plan, the group manages to corner Abigail and jab her with a tranquilizer, but by then, she has already managed to bite Sammy in her arm. Abigail regains her consciousness and finds herself locked inside an elevator. The group tries to have a conversation with Abigail, but it clearly doesn't work in their favor. Instead, they all learn the real reason why Abigail brought them to the mansion in the first place. Abigail explains how she planned the whole kidnapping, how there was never any money involved to begin with, and that Lambert simply worked for her. Abigail starts addressing the group by their real names, much to their surprise, and it becomes clear each member of the group was chosen for their various affronts to Christophe Lazar. Joey calls out Abigail and tells her that she has also learned a thing or two about her. For starters, she is certain that Abigail's father doesn't love her, and that she has only been killing her father's enemies so as to win his love back. With the group leaving Frank in charge of watching Abigail, the vampire is effortlessly able to break out of her confinement. She would have brutally killed Frank had Joey not rightfully intervened in the situation, ripped out the wooden planks from a nearby window, and exposed Abigail to the sunlight, which in turn destroyed her arm. Abigail starts to shriek in pain, and also fear, may we add. And as she is seen withdrawing back to a dark corner, Joey manages to escape from there with Frank, while Abigail is seen regenerating her arm. The group secures themselves inside a sunlit hallway. Realizing that there are just a few more hours left before nightfall, the group decides to find the power source so as to reset the whole locking system. However, Abigail telepathically transforms Sammy into a vampire, who ends up first feeding on Peter and then kills him. Next, Abigail has Sammy lure Joey and Frank into a trap, but that only leads to Joey being left with no other choice but to kill Sammy using reflected sunlight on her. Joey and Frank eventually locate the mansion's control room and find Lambert inside. No points for guessing, Lambert's a vampire and offers a deal to Frank. Lambert explains how Abigail transformed him into a vampire 2 years ago for deceiving her father, and that Lambert's current job since then has been to bring in all her father's enemies in the mansion so that she can gleefully execute her hunting games. Lambert states that he is done doing things for Abigail and asks Frank to help him kill her, and even her father, Lazar, who is on the way, so that the two of them can take over the whole empire. Frank accepts Lambert's offer and has himself transformed into a vampire, only to stake the latter. Next, he incapacitates Abigail by drinking her blood, and thereby boosting his new abilities in the process. This is followed by a brief fighting scene between Frank and Joey, with the former flexing his newfound powers. While fighting, Frank tells Joey that he intends to make her his puppet after biting her, and then make her kill her own child. After this, Frank drops her from an elevated height, only to have Abigail come and rescue her. Abigail tells Joey to help her kill Frank, and in turn, she will let her go. No points for guessing. The two team up against Frank, and after an exhausting, bloody battle that almost felt like it just wouldn't end, Abigail and Joey are able to stake Frank together, with Frank dead, and despite getting bitten by him earlier, Joey is freed from the vampire's curse. Things finally seem to work in favor of Joey until Christophe Lazar shows up. As Joey gasps in horror, Lazar intimidatingly states to her that he has had many names over countless years. With Lazar continuing to threaten Joey, Abigail stands up to Lazar and tells him that not only did Joey save her life, but she was also there when her own father wasn't. Lazar looks at his daughter, and for Abigail's sake, the movie ends with Joey leaving the mansion and relishing her last saved lollipop. Ending explained. The decision to spare the life of Joey can easily be categorized as a rare act of mercy, which, of course, is a part of the film's unseen plot twist. Abigail's rampage featured in the flick happens to be nothing more than a response to being abruptly kidnapped by the criminal gang. Given that the whole thing was a trap in the first place, and the solitary fact that Lambert was also working for Abigail, it seemed all the more appropriate that she would not let anybody walk out of the mansion alive. Also, dare we disregard the fact that the primary reason Joey landed up in the mansion was because she had killed one of Lazar's close men when she performed a medical surgery under the influence of drugs. So then what is it that made the titular vampire spare the life of Joey, especially when the deadly vampire had absolutely no such reason to do so in the first place? The movie ends with a surprisingly human gesture, one that no one saw coming, not at least from the trailer. As we reach the film finale, Abigail voluntarily opts to spare Joey, and to everyone scratching their heads and thinking why, it's because the pair of Joey and Abigail formed a connection right from their first personal encounter with each other. Like it or not, but Joey happens to be the only character out of the ragtag group of criminals who actually seemed to be bothered about the little girl. Her acts of pinky promise reflected a genuine concern that she had developed for Abigail. Maybe if we aren't entirely wrong, it had a little something to do with Joey's own son, Caleb, for that matter. In a way, Abigail did remind her of her little son. It is also hinted that Joey is in all probability the very first person in a long time who has appeared real to Abigail, even going to the whole extent of actually caring for her. If you ask us, the connection between the duo felt very real, especially with Joey repeatedly assuring Abigail in the beginning that she will not let anyone hurt her for that matter. She even proves her point when Frank asks Peter to kill Abigail, and Peter literally goes to do so. It's Joey who intervenes in the situation and stops Peter by taking hold of his gun and pointing it at him instead. But of course, everything goes south post that, with Abigail revealing her true vampiric identity to the whole group. Abigail's final decision to spare Joey and even convince her father to do the same shows that despite being a centuries-old, highly powerful vampire, that she is capable of feeling a sense of gratitude, especially after Joey joined forces with her and helped her take down the newly transformed Frank. Her particular act of rebellion against her father showed how grateful she was to Joey, and the fact that she was there by her side when it should have been her father all along. Anatomy Explained. Here, we will particularly be exploring the lethal abilities of Abigail, or in other words, our beloved ballerina vampire. Please do not make the mistake of underestimating Abigail as an ordinary little girl. Mind you, looks can be deceptive, and she is actually a centuries-old vampire with a particular penchant for ballet, tutu, and Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. In fact, if we may add a little more here, Abigail doesn't really mind dancing with a headless corpse, especially when her favorite song is on. It's almost like she's immersed in her own world, and she loathes it when she is disturbed in the middle of her performance. Her ballet moves are not only on point, but they are also menacingly deadly. What makes her even creepier is that she never walks. She's always moving like a ballerina dancer, and trust us when we say this to you, it's not a pleasant sight at all. Now, while one would think that it would be easy to incapacitate her with items like stakes, holy crosses, and garlic, you know, things that are usually deemed to be a vampire's weakness, don't let that fool you like it fooled the trio of Frank, Sammy, and Peter. Abigail made it evidently clear that she cannot be hurt by any of the items that we just mentioned, and made sure she had all the items work out in her favor. For instance, it was Frank who carried the stake, and he wanted nothing more than stake Abigail with it. Of course, Abigail had her own plans and she effortlessly managed to shove the very same stake in Frank's thigh. In terms of her strength, Abigail is extremely powerful. We are literally talking about bursting through doors, easily breaking out of confinements, and overpowering enemies who are thrice her size, without the slightest bit of any difficulty. A particular sequence in the movie hints at the possible fact that she is even capable of flight when she attempts to lift up Frank by his legs, before the group successfully manages to tranquilize her and lock her inside an elevator. But if we are to look at her best ability, it has to be the fact that she can heal herself. Now, what's a vampire without having the power to regenerate herself, right? Origins. Abigail is a Hebrew name that basically means my father's joy, and judging the movie by its turn of events, it's fair to say that Abigail does stay true to her name. Now, the movie serves as a modern-day reimagining of Dracula's daughter, or in other words, Countess Maria Zaleska. And while it is true that throughout the movie, this name hasn't been mentioned once, it is implied that the titular character is Countess Maria Zaleska, as the film conclusively happens to be a loose remake of the 1936 movie. Also, one cannot really deny the recently released film does leave the implication that Christophe Lazar is a modern-day name for Dracula. And while the name of Dracula in particular has not been mentioned once throughout the flick, Lazar appearing in the finale does its job eliminating the confusion. Marvelous verdict. Well, that is all for today. And with this, we finally come to the end of our blood-soaked ride. So have you watched Abigail, or are you yet to sink your fangs into the movie? We hope that when you do watch, you do let us know your thoughts about the film in the comment section down below. To those who have seen, how would you like to rate the carnage? Is it close to a 10 or what? Share everything with us in the comments. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please do leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching. Have a nice one.